Hi gang, Scott here. Welcome to InPost and thanks for joining me today. This video is a long exposure, a multi-minute exposure, and those pose interesting challenges for us. When we're taking a long exposure outdoors, lighting conditions are dynamic, things are changing, and sometimes you don't come away with the exact exposure you wanted. Things may be a little bit dark or a little bit bright, or there's a mix of things going on in the scene as what I have with this photo here. So I want to walk you through several steps that I did to balance out the foreground and get separation of the elements, really just balance out the whole photo. And it's a lot of dodging and burning. So this is the photo after some basic conversions, right? Did my basics, used a black and white profile to do the monochrome work, some adjustments to tone and presence, and normal things that we do, trying to keep that rock set crisp, adding a little bit of texture but not going over the top. In the black and white area itself, minimal work, really just brightening oranges and yellows, which is fundamentally our rock areas, and a tiny bit of tone work. And tone work is where things really started to turn the page. Let me turn off the tone for before and after. You can see those are pretty subtle shifts in those lower midtones. Just these tiny nudges here to raise up exposure ever so slightly. These things are kind of locking down the curve so I don't have too much manipulation. And that's when I started to turn my attention more to graduated filters, radials, because I want to get that water that's in between those rocks to be brighter, and so there's more contrast in the scene. There's more separation of the elements. So let me walk you through some snapshots that were used to make that happen. Number one, basic conversion. That is what I just showed you here. First up, balance exposure. We'll choose that one there, and we'll see the foreground brighten a little bit. What's going on? This is a graduated filter. I'll click on that. And this is pretty straightforward, right? There's not too much different here. The fundamental difference is the luminance range. You'll notice those numbers over here, 41, 78. Interesting that the slider, there's a little bug in Lightroom. I had to hover over that before it would recognize and change those little arrows. But now you can get a better look at seeing, yeah, we're not affecting everything. We're protecting those deep shadows. So not raising exposure on the rocks, only on the water. So previous snapshot, current snapshot, right? Okay, that was pretty good overall balance. Now to get to work on the water itself, more brightness in the water. You see that brightness really come up. Second pin's been added. What's going on there? Same idea, just targeting it more. In this case, really pushing exposure up further. You'll notice the range on the luminance is tighter. So really homing in on that water in between those rocks, and popping shadows up a little bit more. So all of that really pushing the light brighter, again, pushing those tones brighter. More time before that first water brighten, after. All right, still not enough. Didn't feel it the full way. So okay, let me do another one here. Brighten the water one more time. And so we have a third pin. And in this case, the way this one worked out was dehaze. And that was kind of interesting, using dehaze to get that water to pop here. If I go and reset that dehaze slider, and then I'll undo that, you can see that really made a nice difference. And that was kind of like a good discovery working through this particular photo using dehaze. But I guess I say adding haze. Really, it's negative dehaze, so we're adding haze. It's adding that fuzziness, that brightness. So that was a good way to pop those tones in between those rocks. So one more time, before that dehaze. After that, I should say haze, not dehaze, haze. That really made a good difference. And speaking of the rocks, turn my attention next to the rocks. So we'll add a rocks, and we'll see yet another pin has shown up. Let's highlight that one. And we can see, once again, courtesy of the luminance range mask, I did increase exposure a little bit, still overall wanting to balance the scene. The sky in the top half of the photo was bright. The foreground was kind of dark, but really focusing the texture and clarity on the rocks. Let me go over and hover over that luminance range mask so you can see it's really down at the lower end, shadows only, right? So we're hitting those rocks with a pop of texture and clarity before that rock change. After, so those rocks are more prominent. The water got a little bit of a boost as a result of that, which is okay. We're still keeping balance, and we're really getting that separation of those elements. All right, moving on then. I was happy here with the foreground. A couple of things that needed to be fixed. Let me turn off the pins here. And the midground is kind of flat. There's this house on the hill and the tree there. This is kind of hazy and needs a little work. And also the sky now, I would like to have a little more dynamic action happening in the sky. So these shadowy areas, darkening those. So let's move on to our midground with the house there, and you'll see that gets darker. What's happening there? Radial filters. Hover on that one. Variations on a theme here, right? In this case, clarity's going up. Dehaze is being increased, so it's decreasing haze, letting some of those darker tones show through. And once again, luminance range mask. Let me hover for the little bug action. We can see we have a protection against the very, very brights. And so the result, before that midground change, after, and balancing it out, making sure that those stronger chunks of land, chunks of rock, they're dark, they're crisp, they're relatively prominent. Final step in the sky. So we'll add the sky and you'll see those shadowy areas in the sky get deeper. And those are two different radials, one here and one here. They're both fundamentally doing the same thing. Let me highlight on this one here. We can see that there is a luminance range mask. It is the lower midtones, let's call it, and it's decreasing exposure. So the types of settings here are not particularly novel, right? It's really dodging and burning and leveraging luminosity masks to do the work. It's just methodically working through the scene, foreground to midground to background, and all added up. Here was the basic conversion, and then here is the final image. And I think it's a lot stronger as a result. So that was the main sequence I went through. Really a lot of dodging and burning work to get separation in the elements in the foreground, balance things out, and just shape the photo overall. Hope you found the video interesting, fun, educational. If you got questions, go ahead and drop them below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.